switch it up. We can switch it up. Switch it up like it's about to go up. Break them like internet. Goofies try to run up. We leave them in the dead.
You say, okay, I have a lot of money, but you have no money unless you take profits.
When the first ever spot ETF was created for gold 10x.
And the only thing I really knew was Bitcoin at the time, so I just invested very heavily into that. Rode it all the way up.
What's up?
My name is Jeff. Even the creators have said it's going to be the predecessor of CBDC.
What that taught me was that I need to be self-sufficient.
A solid DCA investment strategy, and pretend the red sell button doesn't even exist.
We about to go up like.
Special guest night, baby. Let's get it popping. We got that 6th grade math whiz in the house. We got that fantasy football phenom in the house. Hailing all the way from the Lone Star State. This guy knows a little bit about cryptocurrency. The one, the only. We got WALLRUS with us in the house. Thank you so much for joining us, my guy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us live. For those that are catching us on the replay, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys smash that like button if you haven't already. Check in the description. You guys will find a Telegram link with our Telegram channel. Make sure you guys join that Telegram and make sure you guys follow us on social media. With that being said, Mr. Jeff, Mr. Apex Hex, I'm going to turn it on over to you, buddy. What's going on?
Hola, just hanging out. Really excited about this. WALLRUS, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. I want to say, whenever I reached out to you, you were very, very, very open and willing to meet with us. So that meant a lot, and I'm glad you're here. So I guess I just want to, well, my chair broke. I wanted to start with the most important question first, and that is, who is your fantasy sleeper this year?
Ooh, fantasy sleeper. So I think James Cook is one that's getting slept on. Typically, he's a little undersized for the role I think he's going to have. But when you look at like preseason, he didn't get pulled out on any of like the short yardage stuff, which is where the big concern is. I think that Damian Harris is like overrated as a kind of a player. He's been kind of efficient in some of that like zone and gap stuff that you see from the Patriots, but James Cook is going to get the work. It's not a big offense. A lot of times they talk about like mobile quarterbacks not throwing to the running backs, but that usually shifts when you have one who can actually catch, right? Like you see this with whatever you see, like CMC, like Cam Newton didn't throw to running backs, then he had CMC. So I think James Cook is like underrated as like a true route runner and kind of a difference maker. So I think James Cook's someone, I think typically right now he's going around like that 6-7 turn, but that cat's going to be a 10 to 15 RB on the season.
I concur. Why didn't I concur? Good deal. All right, last one, fantasy football. This is what I've been asking myself because I'm trying to decide. Who would you take, Chris Olave or Devontae Smith?
Olave.
Okay, we're in agreement. Say less. So anyway,
Devontae is one of the what do they call them? The super twos, right? You got Devontae, Higgins, and Waddle.
Wilson.
Yeah. Well, Wilson's the one though. Like I'm talking about like Higgins, Devontae, and Waddle are kind of like the twos on their own team.
Okay.
Olave is that dude, man. I love that guy back at Ohio State. I think people looked at like him staying in a few things as kind of like blotches on his profile overall. That dude's smooth. He's so smooth that you don't realize how fast he is in and out of his breaks. Derek Carr tends to lean in on his one. And if you look at, people make the big case for like Wilson because he got the quarterback upgrade and because he had Zach Wilson games, but like Andy Dalton and all that stuff going on with Olave. Olave is a stud. He's that dude, and that dude's going to catch 150 plus targets, man. He's a savage.
Agreed. Right when he came into the league, I was telling my buddy that player comparison just like Marvin Harrison. He's like, he's not going to be as good as Marvin Harrison. I didn't say he's going to be as good. I said player comparison. But yeah. So all right, more crypto before I drive too many people away. I guess start off with what got you into crypto? Like a little intro about you.
Man, so it was just one of the most juvenile things. I found out about Bitcoin and it was just like, wait, you can buy guns and drugs with this stuff and the government can't stop it. I'm in. So it was super juvenile. It was just the awe of it, right? It was just kind of the around it, right? It was just interesting, people involved. So it was super juvenile. I bought it, owned it for a while. I owned it like back in 2015, like early, but that's not really like the beginning of my crypto experience at all. I got it. I bought a few things online, and it was cool. Like, it was just something that was kind of neat. And one of the areas I like to bring up is that at one point I caught part of one of the bull runs, and I'd had like 3 or 4 grand at the time. It was something single digits as far as grand, and then it went over 10. So like I added a digit. And like now there's so much like nuance, and I talk about all this kind of crazy stuff. At the time, I'm telling you, I pulled up my phone, went, oh, I got more Bitcoin, closed the phone, and just went on. The idea that I had tripled my money and hadn't touched anything, that like this stuff had gone up, all that cool stuff that I thought about it being censorship resistant and, in a juvenile way, none of it just hit the brain. I just went on living the dream. So that was when I very first kind of got exposed to it and thought it was cool. And that's what led me to seeing Roger Ver's, Richard Hart's. I always forget his name, the guy that was the kind of lead spokes guy from Blockstream at the time. And it was hearing like that Bitcoin Cash, Big Block, SegWit, like that, like pro and con, how is this thing going to get built? And hearing those types of people that I thought were really like, these are smart guys that have made money, that are kind of, biting their thumb at the government, trying to work out like really high end problems. That got me attracted to it. So it was the people at that point. Like, that was such an interesting time in crypto, and it just kind of, went from there, and I've just got more and more and more involved from then.
Sure. I like it. So drugs and guns. Elizabeth Warren is going to have a video of you when she's running for president saying, this is what I was talking about.
This is the guy in crypto that we were trying to stop. That was me.
This is him. I told y'all he existed. I told y'all. Yeah, funny enough, I was doing some research the other day, and I was looking at when Bitcoin Cash was more valuable than Ethereum. Total market cap. I thought that was funny. If only people would have known. But
so I brought this up a few times. I think Bitcoin Cash was right. And again, this is my favorite phrase. I repeat it all the time because it's the most powerful thing that he's particularly said to me. When RH said you can be technically right and price wrong, that's what I think will happen with a lot of that stuff with Bitcoin Cash. I think that, again, there's some of the issues with some of the personalities, but the idea of this thing was meant to be digital peer-to-peer cash. Like, that's what this thing was meant to be. So yes, you could get into some of the trade-offs around like centralization of nodes and a few things, but I think if you just boiled it down to a sentence, the Bitcoin Cash guys this was supposed to be cash. Let's try and make it cash, right? Now, again, you can get to a certain point of some of the technicals that are far even above my own head, let alone, the vast majority of people that are actually in the space, but they wanted to make it cash. That was their goal. They talked very, very much about that idea. So I have a lot of respect for Roger Ver. He's had some little things come up here and there, but I really like Ver. I like a lot of stuff he says about freedom. He's, went and expatriated and went and had citizenship by investment. So he's done a lot of things that resonate with me, but the idea of trying to make that thing cash, like, that was their push. So again, it's one of those that Bitcoin's got its own direction now. It's got layer 2s with Lightning, and now they're going to have that redebate again, when it comes to ordinals and snore signatures and half sign trans. They have a lot of cool stuff going on there where they're going to have to revisit some of this old battlegrounds. But actually, again, at the time, I wasn't holding enough to really care one way or the other. For me, it was just I'm watching a football game play out, right? So I was just cheering for a side. And I actually think the Bitcoin Cash guys were right. They were priced wrong for sure, but I think overall they were technically right.
Actually, that's kind of interesting that you mentioned Bitcoin Cash. One of the things that, I originally was looking at when I was learning about it was that, yeah, they wanted to create kind of like a whole like cash system and all that. But if you've ever looked at any kind of like cash system ever, it's always been some sort of like large government or like empire or whatever, right? That is always distributed as, this is the currency. And so I think where you're totally correct, right, in the idea of it's like the technicalities of it, like, hey, peer to peer. I think the original idea probably died simply because it was, well, not, I don't want to say died, but close enough versus actual Bitcoin over here. Yeah. But I think it was simply because there wasn't like enough backing on it. Because generally, when it comes to like an entire currency of some kind, which would be like cash, you're going to have an entire government like, this is it now, everybody use it, and it's like mandatory to be in that country. You know what I mean?
So I think there's a few things there. I think that's the biggest one. The other is you always hear that people they sell their worst asset, they spend their worst cash, right? So if I was like, hey, someone here owes me $50 or €50 on the show, you're not giving me Pulse or like, you're not going to give me any of the things that I might end up going buying with it, right? Y'all are just going to give me that crappy USD, right? They're going to give me the worst things you have. So part of that like cycle about getting something started as a currency is, if it's the best money, it's what you spend the latest, which makes it kind of hard for adoption. So you sort of have this weird S in some of these things that go early on with trying to make it a currency. And there's two big things that in crypto I brought up a lot. One is, like, we see it now with like friend tech and some of this. The two things that immediately come to mind when we talk about just cryptos, distributed ledgers, is, hey, we want to replace the dollar and we want to replace social media in some way. Guys, I don't know how to tell everybody, that's the two hardest effing things to replace on the planet. Like, the margin of error on a social network is microscopic, right? So like, we've seen how much these things ebb and flow with the smallest changes, how much regime changes make a difference, how much just whatever that guy from Twitch or something caused a riot in New York. Like, there's such a viral component to social media that replacing those, especially with limitations on data, is basically effing impossible. And the dollar, I mean, like, because we got China and Russia and like giant world powers trying to de-dollarize the world. Like, the idea that we're just going to kind of click and handle that, like, that's a little presumptuous. That is obviously the end goal, and there's things getting better and better. And there's places like El Salvador, and now you're hearing pro Bitcoin here in the US for one thing, but like in Venezuela. So it's edging on some of those cases where it can be used as a proxy for currency. But that was the original goal, and it's the hardest goals. But I think that if you look at DeFi and the rest of the space, we've accomplished a lot of cool shit. It's just trying to make a true currency. It's tough. It's tough sledding.
Well, one of the things about that I would say is that once you start getting the technology involved, though, right, then you're going to end up with a better a better ability to be able to keep that better technology money, right? And so if you start having, like smart cities being able to just kind of like automatically know where everything is having issues and stuff, then cryptocurrencies, or at least some form of it, right, is going to be used to automatically like bill somebody to schedule it, to have them go out there and fix it. Like if the lights go down at a certain intersection, right? So it's kind of like auto cities, almost to say, right?
Yeah, and I think we're close to a few things that don't even sound interesting that will radically change the experience and relationship we have with crypto. So most people in crypto don't use a multi-sig wallet, right? Like, it's a little trickier, getting no sys, it's a higher end thing. Everyone's debit card's multi-sig. When you swipe it, you push in your PIN, you say okay, and then your bank has to say okay also. So there's two signatures that were required before that funds makes a transfer. So a credit card is already multi-sig, right? Again, talking about like some of that adaptation around, if I have a cash account, like when I use, any of my credit cards and I travel overseas, I don't have a separate account where like now I have to go load euros and then switch networks and tell it I want to use euros now to just put the chip in and hit okay, right? So some of that interface that we'll see from the wallets, things, again, no one even cares about, but are this close to making that relationship super clean. So I've kind of said we're kind of on the precipice of like the first iPhone. Everything the iPhone did already existed. You could already get online. There were already apps. There were styluses. There was Palm and Pre and all that cool stuff. Just no one cared because the stuff sucked. It was unusable, right? And then the iPhone, boom, you get enough of an interface upgrade. The buttons go away, and it's clean enough that everybody can now use it. And so there's not just like a Pareto curve, but there's also these kind of like a break point that you'll see. And I think we're on the edge of a lot of that type of tech, because most wallets right now are basically beautified command line prompts. Like you're still basically operating DOS, trying to get this chain to write and go interact with this thing to get these things to move around. No one does that stuff like that. I brought up multi-sig. Another one is privacy transactions. Most people probably watching probably do not know how to properly go do a private transaction. You want to know how I do it on Venmo? I fucking click the button that says private. I hit private, right? Now we're getting close to where a wallet might be able to go hit private and, go through one of these ZK rollups, or use a mixer or a tumbler, or again, there's a few different variations. Those things are getting closer and closer to where a user can use a wallet that actually is closer to an operating system. So right now, a wallet is basically a command line prompt. What we really need to get to is that a wallet is an operating system, because we even call them out. Like, what do we call like the websites for anything that runs these protocols? We call them a DApp, a decentralized app. We don't really treat them that way. Like, they're basic command line prompts that we're trying to interact with all independently. When we can get wallets to wrap all these things up, where we're not having to individually go and trigger all these things, it'll be an entirely different user experience. And that comes from a few things. One is that's just really, really hard in crypto still, getting that type of throughput, kind of continuation of services throughout multiple different DeFi protocols. And then the other is basically having low fee environments where, so this was kind of right in the bull run of 2020. I had a little private group. I was like, hey, let me just show you guys Gnosis, a multi-sig. So I sign on like 6 people. We go in, we're sitting here on like a Telegram channel. Everyone's talking together. And all we do is like, we add somebody, we take somebody off, we make a transaction. We all go through and sign. We change how many people have to sign. Like we went from like 5 of 8 to 3 of 8, just basically playing with it. I spent like $300, like to basically sit here for 45 minutes and make a handful of transactions. So when we see this throughput in data, along with, again, it's tricky, but with wallet tech, someone will be able to hop on and be able to do things like the same way that we see with, like, say, Venmo or like Starbucks. I made that same reference. Like, my wife can hop on a Starbucks app. Okay, so Starbucks points and dollars. There's 2 currencies. She pays with an NFT. There's a rebate function. It's like, how far away is this from any of the stuff that we're doing in crypto? My wife will do it for a discount on a coffee cup. Most people don't care at all about any of the stuff that we're doing because it's hard, it's complicated. So we're right on the edge of like working through. Will basically take us from command line prompt craziness to, oh, it's an iPhone. I just, anyone can just basically pick this thing up, start hitting buttons, and we're not far off. Like, all that stuff exists. It's just those tweaks in UI to get it all seamless, and the user experience for crypto will wildly change. And I would say probably the next 2 years.
I mean,
WALLRUS.
That's a quick question on that.
100%.
So we've talked a few times on this channel about, what it would take to sort of see a perfect storm theory in crypto. One of those things that I've talked about is a necessity to get sort of those new traders into the market, the non-institutional people, the everyday Joes. We need simplicity. We need an easy way for them to onboard their money, a safe way to store it, self-custody it, and make transactions, be it swap coins, be it purchase something, whatever the case may be. If that happens in 2 years, I mean, we're talking about potential Bitcoin ETFs, Ethereum spot ETFs. We're talking about institutional money coming in. When China's economy recovers, their individual investors might come in. So, I think that is a big part of sort of what could help crypto really take off to the next step. Because I think one of these cycles, if it's this one or the next one, it's going to be a potential for that really big blow off the top that we might never see again and haven't really seen yet before, some of those early days in Bitcoin. If it is 2 years, do you think that could line up with some of the other really important aspects of where crypto is going, and maybe the sort of make the end of the next bull market increase?
So
a little bit past that.
It would. I think there's a lot of logic in that, but so far we really haven't seen the price. Like we just brought up Bitcoin Cash. So far we haven't really seen technicals and tech line up with the chart. Like, crypto is better than it's ever been, right? Like, most of us have a better user experience. You could say some of the on and off boarding is more difficult in some ways, but if you look at the Coast guys in our ecosystem, Trust, Robinhood just got kind of outed as having that $3 billion wallet, which is sitting in what I think is a single non-multi-sig. Well, I'm not going to get into those guys. I'm worried about them. But if you look at like, crypto's better, right? Like, Bitcoin has ordinals, and there's more privacy, and there's more throughput on Lightning, and there's more adoption in some of these, kind of ancillary things. Price isn't up. So I would like to say that's the case. And I think that if you if the tech expands to the point that we actually have this, tier or two increase in adoption size, maybe that gives us, maybe we call it a soft landing using the kind of current, kind of Fed terminology, that we go up, kind of do our bull still, and then we get a soft landing where not as many people leave. Because I think that's what we've seen this time. I think that this bear market's been really rough, especially for US users.
Yeah.
But people didn't really leave. You know what I mean? Like, no one really, this cycle, there wasn't a Bitcoin's going to zero. No one thought that, right? So the tech, Lindy effect, all the stuff that we're kind of getting into is we've seen that it wasn't going to go to zero. So maybe this next cycle is, hey, this stuff's actually so good that there's, we've seen a little bit of the news recently where we had bad macro news and we got kind of a slight pump in the ecosystem with Bitcoin. So maybe, again, we're seeing some of that foreshadowing that this next cycle, improvements in wallets, ETFs, general adoption, ease of on, all this stuff, more custodian partners is a big part. If you look at a lot of just big money, those guys don't hold this stuff. Like they're, if you, even Buffett probably can't tell you where 80% of his money is. He doesn't actually, like, he can look at that portfolio spreadsheet, but he doesn't know where the custodians are. And again, it goes on and on. So custodian partners and that type of easement of big players coming in and some of that smoothing of that curve a bit. I think it makes a lot of logical sense. I would just say that would be a change over what we've seen, but I do think that's a rational thought process.
Hey, Walrus, what do you have to say to people who would tell you that if we had more of these third-party custodials, right? Because like you mentioned, big players like Buffett, they're not going to want to hold all of their money in a safe somewhere, right? They're not going to store all their gold in a safe. They're not going to get all their cash under their bed. But, some of the OGs in crypto would say, like, the more third-party involvement that we have here in crypto, it's kind of antithetical to the spirit of what crypto was supposed to be. So what would you have in response to say to those people who would make that argument?
That's dumb. There's that clear first idea that this is censorship resistance, custodianship, 2A, red meat. That's our vibe, right? And I think that's a wonderful one. I 100% agree with a lot of that narrative. I've talked about how much, self-empowerment, not to sound too kind of meta and goofy, how important that is, and that relationship with crypto that's been really important to me. But that is not antithetical. The idea of lowering the barrier to entry and censorship resistance means people can use these things how they choose, right? So the dollar has a lot of issues that pretty self-apparent, right? But if you're talking about fungibility, that was pretty damn convenient. Like, I've spent dollars in a handful of countries all over the place, and it was awesome. Like, dollars work great for that, right? So, like, spending currency, dollars work really fantastic. They just don't hold value. Again, we know that narrative. So when it comes to these things, if someone wants to have a third-party custodian and they're going to hold dollars or gold or some type of very, very control something in the S&P 500, or they're going to hold in Bitcoin, I'll take that. I'd rather have them in Bitcoin, right? So if they're going to be on Robinhood and they've got to use, and they're trading fake paper Bitcoin, all right, that's not great, but it's better than them doing nothing, right? They have exposure to the ecosystem. So I think you move people down lines, but what we need to do in some of this solving, I think, is that we need to understand, like, where decentralization is. So to me, if you wanted to build a tool and you wanted to say, okay, this tool does whatever it does, right? And there's a tokens that are allocated to kind of like the generation of fees, right? If somebody puts that out and it's a DeFi contract on the blockchain, but they own every token, that's still DeFi to me. You can choose to use it or not. They can't censor it, right? But they own 100% of their work. That's still DeFi, right? So I think we're still sorting some of this stuff out about what DeFi means to everyone, right? So maybe I don't want to sit here and have custodianship over X amount of, I got a couple million. I want to have that custodian because I still want to have financial expertise. I want to be able to use a trust. Like, I want to use all these institutions we still have, but I don't want exposure to the dollar. I want exposure to Bitcoin. Where's the problem? That's a good thing, right? That's awesome. So that person, again, as long as they're tangibly understanding that they're taking on that counterparty risk for whatever the payout is, people can choose to do that, right? Like I still own things that aren't crypto, and I understand that risk profile, right? So I think that when it comes to how we see crypto, it's going to be this elongation of where there's some of us that are like, F you guys, I don't want anything. Don't track my stuff. Screw MetaMask and consensus. JP Diamond's an idiot. I don't want none of it. And we want to be Bitcoin, Monero, full anonymous, all the way on the edge. More power to those people. Like that should be an option, right? People should be able to defer away from centralized safety and oversight and people that you don't know, that you didn't elect, telling you what to do. I don't really like that. So that should be an option. But we should open up that continuum along the way of where someone can be all the way on the end and say, hey, I just want exposure to the price. I'm fine with that. They're a step away to, hey, I want this custodian in a proper way. Or again, some of these things with hybrid custody and multi-sigs to use financial partners. That stuff's important. So quickly on that, that's something else that I think is a huge missing area along with some of this wallet tech. So hybrid custody is a big part of that. So if you use multi-sigs, again, I don't want to get too in the weeds on the technical side, but what should be reasonable is for a lot of those players, they do that stuff because they have expertise. They have a financial planner, a tax advisor, a broker. They have these people out here who have something very valuable to add. So they should be able to basically have a multi-sig where whoever that advisor or basically professional is can have inputs on what transactions are going to happen, but they don't hold their bag. So I think that part of solving some of that dilemma you're talking about is actually improvements in the tech around hybrid custody. So I think again, there's a few areas there to really improve, but the idea that we don't want participation in crypto because they're not participating the way we want, I think that's bullshit.
No, for sure. Tracker, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Walrus, about what you were saying a little earlier about basically you're talking about in order to get mass adoption, we have to streamline the technology so it's a better user experience. And that's just technology in general. And I totally agree with you on that. I think though, but you would probably agree with all of us that unfortunately to make the money, you need to be in the now and living through these rough times of this evolution and having to learn how the nuts and bolts work. It's kind of like the evolution of the computer is very similar. How, nobody knew at the time what a game changer the USB port was going to be for all your devices to easily connect, or building out a stabilized protocol. These are the technology and fundamentals that make everything work. And unfortunately, it's not sexy, it's not fun, but if you build this streamlined protocol in place, now you can build all this, pretty eye-catching and streamlined 2-button, 3-button clicks, and anything you want done is done for you. But I think, like you said, I agree with what you're saying, but you would have to agree here, though. If you want to make the money, you got to be in it now to basically invest and understand how the nuts and bolts work, so you can be 20 steps ahead of the normies and the mainstream when they come into mass adoption. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and I think that kind of goes into kind of what Agent Jay was bringing up a bit, and that's this letting people play how they want. So if someone was getting into crypto and they said, hey, if they came to the DGen Roundtable, like, hey, I've got 10K, what should I do? No one's going to tell them to go be a miner, right? But there's just a group of guys who are David Fetters, RH Max, Gammas. If you were like, hey, you're going to make a bunch of money, they'd be like, yeah, that's cool, man, but what do I get to build, right? Like you have that subset of people who want to build cool stuff, right? That just are into infrastructure and hardware and
architect minded.
Absolutely, right? And so I think that if we can even improve some of the language and how we communicate, so to like, again, let me go ahead and get both L's in my name here. So something like L, I had a conversation recently with someone who's involved in the ecosystem. It was a really great call. I was really glad he reached out, but he brought up his dad. So his dad's in real estate, and he had talked to his dad about Hex, Bitcoin, ETH, all this kind of stuff. And he gets it, but like, he's an older real estate guy, right? Like he's got his mode, he's got his grind, he's done well. He doesn't want to change. And then he was like, hey, you can collateralize an asset and take a 0% loan. He went, wait, what happened? So LL resonated hard with him, right? Like that was enough to get him like super brought in. So that, again, we got to give everybody their narrative, right? That's why I try to be pretty balanced, even on stuff I don't like. One, I'm never that confident that I'm perfect, right? I'm going to be wrong about all kinds of stuff. The other is, there's only so many people who like my narrative, right? Like, but I want everybody else to come and play. So like there are people that are just architect minded who are engineers who just build cool ass stuff, and they don't even really care the end result, right? So I think if we do those things, and we start to bring all this like infrastructure and kind of make the ecosystem strong, we'll have people that want to come build these individual things who actually care about point of sale, who care about the hardware wallets. Like there'll be people who want to just build things that they're interested and good at and then offer that service and almost don't even care about crypto to some degree. Maybe that's what kind of gets them aligned, but there's, people that build all kinds of hardware that don't really care about the software side or the end user to some point. They just want to build interesting stuff. And I think that's the answer there, right? Is we expand and give everybody opportunities and highlight this kind of cool stuff. People will find a way to interject their abilities and whatever it is they're passionate about and build cool stuff and be kind of a part of this ecosystem that has a lot of like interesting stuff here, right? Like look at this panel here, man. Like, there's only so many threads that would tie us all together. Crypto brought everybody here together, and this is an interesting group of people that I'm just excited to be on the panel and talk to everybody. So if we can get that kind of passion instilled in all these other people building cool stuff in the world, they'll come build it for us.
No, man, I love that answer. You nailed that. That's exactly how I'm thinking as well, in the sense that there's such an open, there's so many, it's a tool, right? Crypto is a tool, but there's so many applications you can apply to this, and that people don't have no clue how to even wrap their heads around how to even utilize this because they don't even know it even exists. So once you start to understand it, so it comes down to the marketing, it comes down to the streamline and usability or streamline of usability. Once that happens, you're gonna have that massive explosion, and not just people as you keep thinking it's just finance related. It's not. It's going to be you're going to see this massive adoption across so many different industries. You're already seeing a little speck of it right now in real estate, gaming. That's going to blow up. I mean, you name anything in the world, it's going to be touching it in some shape or form. Just with the ability with, I know people think of silly NFT JPEGs and things like that, but really what it is that it's that digital receipt. That receipt is going to be a game changer now moving forward. So yeah, I like that answer. Appreciate that.
100%.
So before we go on, I know Walrus brought up the panel, so I forgot to do intros, so we can make a quick stop for that. First, we'll start with your great value TA, technical analysis over here, Jay. After that, we got Brennan, somebody who I really respect, who knows a lot about a lot, and he's always got good info of different situations. We got Nate, me, and Tracker, who are usually your yield experts, and we got Will, who is Walrus's twin brother.
Bro, so there was one point that Walrus made there that really resonated with me, because one of the things that we've spoken about here before is that the reason why, despite the fact that a lot of crypto maxis have a pushback against having a lot of these centralized entities and big investors like BlackRock kind of moving into the crypto space, the reason why you want folks like that to come into this industry is because you do expose a lot of the people who might be much more conservative, who exist in traditional finance, an in to crypto, right? Because like, well, okay, if BlackRock is investing in this, I trust them. I've invested with them before, and now they're able to give me exposure to Bitcoin without having to directly invest in it. That's cool. But what Walrus brought up was actually something that I actually didn't think about before. He said that when you're broadening the spectrum of exposure for people, not only are the investors are going to come in, but you're also going to have different builders from different industries who might not necessarily have had an opportunity to become involved with crypto before, because it wasn't something that there wasn't anything that was being built on top of crypto that they were going to get involved in necessarily. But now, since you broaden that spectrum of exposure, then you have all of these, like, you increase the talent pool of people that could come into your space and build on top of it. Therefore, people that might have an interest in X or Y are going to have an into it, because because we're building new things on top of it. So I think that was actually, that's some really good insight there.
So there's just quickly on that, there's if you guys were involved in like a lot of like the Telegram stuff that was like really early before kind of a certain point, a lot of stuff moved to Twitter. Do you guys remember like the streaming channel that was on YouTube? I think it was like Hex Trading that would stream the like pulse chain chat and everything like 24 hours. Do you guys remember that?
Yep.
So Togosh, a guy, did that, and I hung out with that guy for just a minute in Dallas, and he came up and was like, hey, Walrus, I'm Togosh. I was like, oh, Togosh, man. Like, hey, what's up, bud? You know, it was like, hey, you know, all that stuff's really cool. And I was telling him like, hey, I really appreciate the stream on YouTube. And he goes like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? What I mean? Like, it's really cool. It's helpful. And he was like, oh, it's, you know, it's no big deal. I was like, no, it's a pretty big deal, man. Like, I don't know how to do that stuff. And like, he had done a few things like putting clocks on there so that we could like, you know, reference it for times. And like people clipped it up when like interesting people would come in. And he goes, oh yeah, they won't let me have Telegram on my work computer. That was why he built it. He literally set this thing up so that he could stream it, watch it for himself so that he could listen to the chat at work. And then was like, yeah, I just thought I'd give it to everybody else. He just built something cool because it fit, right? So that's that whole idea of like expanding this and giving all these people that are like really, really talented a chance to like jump in and do cool stuff. So one, you know, I think Togosh just stepped away for a bit, but I got a lot of love for that guy. But there's just so much of this little stuff in the space where someone was like, oh, I just thought this was cool. Something awesome comes out of it, right? So yeah, you got to have a love for those guys, man, and give those people an opportunity and a space to work through and come out and be great. Sure.
Shout out to Togosh. So speaking of something cool, I want you, not only for myself, but people watching, explain it to me like I've never heard about liquid loans. What does it do? Why are you passionate about it? Why did y'all choose Pulse Chain? And how would you use it personally? Just however you want to roll into it.
Sure. So it starts with like the one sentence is that it's collateralized lending with 0% interest and no repayment schedule. So the idea is you basically just say, hey, you can lock up Pulse at a value, pull out a stable coin, go do whatever what you want with it. There's no interest. It doesn't tick over. And the fact that you're able to, the first part of this that's really so cool is that you can only be done in DeFi because there's no counterparty, because there's not all this extraneous cost, because there's not a building that you go talk to, because there's not somebody who's out here mowing the lawn. There's no interest, right? There's no repayment because you're putting up your own collateral, taking that leverage through this protocol, and you go in your own way. So 0% interest. There's zero repayment schedule, so you can take your own time there. It gives you a lot of interesting things. That's the first part of the magic, right? Like that's where most people jump into. For me, what really initially got me super excited was actually, I was going to go on the nerdy side of stuff, was the stable coin. So stable coins are actually one of those things that jump in. I'll touch on the leverage thing here in a second. So when it comes to stable coins, there's a ton of those issues, fiat backed. They're just a derivative of the dollar that really have a lot of the same issues, but they're kind of a necessary evil for certain aspects. USDL gives you $1 worth of Pulse. So we all kind of like, there's a lot of us that would kind of resonate with like gold backed currencies. This is backed by Pulse. If you're on Pulse Chain, we probably assume that you think Pulse is a good value, something that will, is a valuable collateral. So all these dollars are backed by Pulse. And then from there, so again, now you have this instrument that USDL that gives you, strong decentralized properties to do all the things you would do with the stable coin. And that comes from this lending side. So it gives users a lending protocol that, again, with zero interest, gives you a lot of ways to take advantage of USDL. USDL itself is an asset, kind of a value add to the entire chain, regardless of if you use it directly, right? So like you can just take USDL and use it how you would anything else. And then you take those two mechanics, and then there's the stability pool and loan. So there's two ways to generate yield from it as well. But I think the magic and kind of like hey, once over, what are we doing? Collateralized lending, zero interest, no repayment schedule, and then a decentralized stable coin that you can verify the collateral on chain and has no admin keys. I think that's the magic in one sentence. And then there's obviously, risk on and risk off yield with the stability pool and loan. But I think that's where you'd start.
Okay. I know some people in here got some questions about admin keys and yield, but I wanted to ask you, are we talking just short term? I know you said there's no repayment plan, but let me come up with a hypothetical. Let's say I want to buy $1 million house, and I have Pulse, and I want to take out 20% so I can put a down payment. Is that something that's possible?
100%. So there's the next step, and some of the things we're building on are custodians and partners that will have that kind of direct relationship with being able to take USDL, then be a custodian and actually have like a direct cash to fiat option there. So there's ways to sort of smooth out that next step. But as far as what's on chain, What you'd have, I mean, again, so 20% of a mil would be 200K. So you'd have to have the corresponding collateral. But once you take that, you'd have USDL. And then again, once some of these other things that we're working on or other people are working on, Coast, there'll be ways you can basically just route through Coast. A lot of ways to basically kind of get to fiat. But as far as on chain, you could even, again, if you had enough pulse, you could basically take out all the cash to pay the house and essentially treat your relationship with Pulse and Liquid Loans as your mortgage.
Sure. Okay. Cool deal. Nate, I know you had some questions, buddy. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just quickly, one other thing to add is we, again, we talked about this, tracker, and AJ brought up some of this, like where it touches real world and like these next steps. So some of the other really cool things that go in the future is once we have things like fire blocks, there's a few of them on ETH, as we work with some of these partners on with Pulse Chain, other people could essentially offer different utilities, loans, mortgages, things like that in the real world. And they would have LL as the background, right? So if you have enough pulse back, you could actually go and offer those services and essentially have LL working as behind the scenes, the same way you'd have Fed repos and all these other kind of interesting instruments that we have in like TradFi. As these things kind of evolve, that's like innovation 3 and 4 would be for you to come say, hey, I want to buy a house. They buy the house cash, and essentially the way they're handling the mortgage is that essentially they have Pulse locked up as collateral behind USDL. There's all kinds of ways this thing goes to continue, and that's what DeFi is. That's those couple of innovations there just to foreshadow some crazy stuff in the future.
Sure. I saw somebody in the comments talking about collateral. My bad, Nate. Real quick, super quick. Talking about as far as collateralization, 110%, 150%. I saw some people even talk about like in the haunted strategy and stuff like 1,000%. Is there a certain ratio that y'all recommend or no?
So that's one of those things where I have a little bit of an advantage. So sometimes I can speak as Walrus. Sometimes I'm kind of speaking for LL. So obviously we have to be careful about just straight, when it comes to like financial advice, again, there's kind of a blurry line between coaching and education. So the first part is, one, what are you doing? Right. So what are you doing? Skill level. And then it kind of is the same as what are you doing, but like basically how liquid are those assets? Right. So if you were, again, for your example of like a mortgage, okay, you would want to basically say, okay, I've got X amount of pulse. I'm taking X amount out. How quickly am I looking at repaying this? Am I like stuck? Do I have nothing else going on? Yes, it is over collateralized. So the first part would be, so, okay, if we're taking a mortgage and you're sort of treating this as a traditional loan, then you got to understand that, hey, this is crypto, stuff's volatile, right? And so you'd want to have a higher collateral ratio depending on how you term to repay it, right? So let's say this was an emergency, you actually had to go spend all of this, and then you were trying to look at something. Okay, well, if you're sort of taking this value out, spending it, where basically the next day you're sitting here at zero, like you had to spend that. Okay, that's a very different position as far as ratio than say, okay, I'm gonna take a position out, take USDL, and I'm going to provide liquidity. I'm going to buy the dip in another asset. I'm going to buy Hex. I'm going to buy Hex with it, and then roll 30-day stakes over. I'm going to do different things with Fux or single set. Like there's all these other ways to go chase yield. So depending on how liquid you are with again that USDL, sort of what you take out, that plays a big part of it. So again, if you're using it as a true loan and you're sort of like, hey, I don't really have a way to repay this quickly, especially for a certain range. Okay, well, that's a very different threshold than, hey, sure, I'm using this to extract value, to try to basically increase exposure and generate yield. And then you can kind of go into, again, so like say you're at 200-300%, that's a pretty decent range that the price can ebb and flow and not really cause you a problem, especially when you're generating other yield, because I can pay back. So round numbers. Okay. I have 100K in Pulse. I take out 50K in USDL. I could put 20K in the stability pool and 30K. I'm out here chasing stuff, right? Well, is that price? If say the price rolls against me, I would then take USDL out of the stability pool and then pay it back to that ratio, right? Okay. So because I have that liquid, it's right there. It's a couple of clicks to move over. That gives me, I'm in a lot different position than if I had taken that 50K and then I went to Vegas and then I snorted it up and rented Lambos and went and flexed, right? Okay. Well, then I'm in a very different position at a 200% ratio. So the kind of first parts with all these things is, what are we doing? Right. Like it's kind of a tool. It's almost like, what do you do with a hammer? It's like, well, are you building a house or like,
Sure.
Did your neighbor talk back to you? Okay, with him in the head with it, right? Like, so it depends on what we're doing. But to me, the first part of that is basically one, how experienced are you? Like, are you here all day, right? If you check in once a week, okay, we probably don't want to be hyper aggressive on this stuff. Okay, so how involved are you in the space? Are you checking this all the time? Like, are you a professional crypto player in some ways? Okay, then we can be a little more aggressive. The other is how liquid is whatever we're doing with that USDL to get back to it. Those are the big ones that kind of change that ratio to me.
Sure. So to sum it up, and let me know if I'm right or wrong. Essentially, if you're going to be using this as something where the amount you're borrowing is going to be spent and not accessible, you want to be extremely over collateralized. But if you are doing things where you have access to the money, like yielding, and if you start to see that ratio slide, you can quickly cash out and cover yourself. Correct?
Correct. And then there's a little bit of nuance here. That's kind of a big thing to explain when they brought up the L's. So anyone that's like talked to RH, you almost can't say the word leverage. Like they'll freak out. They'll like panic. Everyone calm down. Like I'm just like, so when we say leverage, like if you look at even things like Uniswap V3, that's kind of leverage. Like that's concentrated liquidity providing, right? So when we say leverage, like it's, like you got to put this back in context. So, going to the BitMEX casino and doing 50x leverage on Bitcoin is quite a bit different than taking essentially, again, if you're at 300 or 400%, right? Like then taking like 1.3% leverage, like, okay, these are very, very different things. So leverage, again, is a pretty big spectrum. Most of the ways that we think of leverage, and essentially, again, a lot of this in this ecosystem, we're thinking of leverage trading. The minimum leverage is like 2x. You can't even go that far in LL. So where most of us think of leverage, LL is already done. Like it is leverage by definition, but sort of where our definition ends is before the definition of leverage really starts. So it is leverage. Don't get me wrong, but we're like, again, like it's firecrackers and nuclear bombs. Like they are just, they both pop, but it's a different kind of pop.
Yeah.
The other big part that's really important for people is what liquidation means. So if you go put 10K and you go 10x long or 10x short on Bitcoin, when you get liquidated and wicked, boom, you're done. Zero. Game's over. That's it. Finito. You have no bag left. Okay. If you go and you take a collateral position in LL and you get liquidated, the pulse is gone, but you still have the USDL or whatever it is you're doing with it, right? So, and this is part of the reason that like instant liquidations and the LL mechanism has some advantages over things like MakerDAO, is because that liquidation, that minimum is so nice that it's at 110%. So that means the theoretical maximum loss that you could have from a liquidation is 15%. It's that 10% collateral difference and then the maximum original loan. So 15%. Now, again, like we talked about, if you took that USDL and then you went to Vegas and you get liquidated, the party's over. So again, it's like anything else. Yes, you can screw these things up. But if you were aggressive, again, using it to chase yield, to do any of these other things we talked about, and you got liquidated, you don't lose everything. Just that pulse is gone. You still have all these other positions, right? So if you had, again, just to kind of use that number, if you had 100K and you took out 50 and you're out here generating yield, one is if you just held the pulse, your bag would be down anyway. So when it goes down in wicks, so essentially like a worst case scenario is that the price of pulse goes down, hits your margin call, you get liquidated, and then it just runs away from you. Like that would be the worst thing, because if it goes, everyone's like, what if it drops 90%? Well, first of all, you're down 90%. So like, this is a bad day, right? So like, it's not like it was sunshine and rainbows if you weren't doing any of these other things. But essentially, again, the worst thing is that it kisses that and then moves off, but you still have this other play here. So if you're doing this to generate yield, and again, depending on what you have going on, then you're just in a lot different environment than what we think of leverage, right? Like you don't get wicked and go to zero. You don't have Binance or somebody playing the other side of the coin with you. That's not how those things works. And again, the amount of leverage you can apply is substantially less, unless you're being ridiculous, than, again, kind of where we mentally think of leverage starting.
I have a couple questions on that. Now that KuCoin is asking for my KYC and I can't leverage trade anymore, liquid loans is starting to seem like a pretty good opportunity. But it's so the minimum is 110% collateral, right? So
Correct.
if I put in 110%, I mean, obviously crypto is very volatile. If it goes down 1%, I get liquidated. Why wouldn't I want it to be higher than 110 if I'm just going to get liquidated once it goes below that? And doesn't it, if for me personally, wouldn't it make more sense to be a little bit safer there? And then the second part to that question, is there any possible way for me to have like a pool that if I was going to be liquidated, that could be drawn from? Like I would have, like a sort of separate wallet that has liquid coins in it. Maybe I'm doing something else with it, maybe not. But if there's something there, it could automatically pull, almost like a safety mechanism for myself. Is that something that is possible in the future? And then, so it's kind of a two-part question.
Yep. So the first one is that those are two different things. You want the minimum ratio to be as tight as possible, because that's where you're going to be liquidated. So let's say the minimum was 150. Well, that would mean if you got liquidated, something like MakerDAO, again, it moves from, I think the lowest possible is like 135. And I think in some case it gets to 180 because they have multiple different assets that back it. So when it's 110, that means everything above that is in play, right? So that means that the most you can lose is that 10%. Again, because there's that public call function and you can instantly liquidate. If you have MakerDAO, it has to go through this auction and that stuff's slow. So they have to add cushion. So you want that minimal collateral to be as low as possible, because that's your loss, right? Like that's what the system says. Hey, you're too close to a risk. We can't be under collateralized. Now you're liquidated. You want that to be as low as possible. So where you want to keep your collateral is obviously higher than that. Again, kind of in that same vein that we talked about earlier. So you would absolutely want it higher than that 110. That's, again, you want the system to have a very low minimum collateral, and then you want to use an appropriate collateral, because again, what that minimum is like, that's where you can be liquidated. So the fact that it's 110, not 130, 140, 150, that means that you don't have that same exposure, right? If you got liquidated at 150, you would lose 50%. That's very different than 10. So that's a good thing. And then the other is everyone wants to build on top, and there's a short answer and then a kind of a longer thread here. So you can do those things. The idea is, okay, if you say, hey, I want to have this 1,000 USDL that's here ready to come cover a liquidation, you could just add it back already. You could already repay the debt and move that collateral up. So what's actually easier is just having essentially like price notifications so that you're just aware. So it's more monitoring than having a safety net, which I get it, right? That feels logical. Hey, I want to have this buffer, but the buffer's in that collateral percentage in the first place. So you do that in different ways. And then again, that also goes back to like, just how liquid are we? And a bit of all of this is like, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So if you're someone who's basically, hey, like you had limited experience, you kind of like, again, a lot of us got into the ecosystem because they followed RH. RH is a great leader, tons of information. They bought Hex, made a mint. They're happy. They're staking Hex. They're done. Like that's kind of their experience, and all this other stuff is new. Okay, well then be safe on this stuff. Like why would you go from say, hey, I just buy and hold one thing and I'm holding it out 5 years. That's a very, very conservative position. Okay, well then there's no need to come here and be at 150% and doing crazy stuff. Kind of do it how you would have done it in the first place. So take your pulse bag, extract value. Again, you could roll over short Hex stakes. Again, you would keep it at that, keep it at 500%, right? And again, especially early on, as people get used to the system, that's also why there's test nets and these things. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So you don't necessarily have to think of, hey, I'm not that involved in crypto. I've only kind of held Hex, or I've owned 2 or 3 things. How do I now balance 150% and do all this? No, that's not how you operate in the system, right? So if you're almost saying, hey, how do I act aggressively at 150 to 200%? You're already wrong, because if you could do that competently, you wouldn't have to ask. So of course we'll offer insight and education, but it's one of those, you don't really have to worry about being hyper aggressive, because that's not your mentality in the first place.
Good stuff. Nate, I know you had a couple questions too, buddy.
Yeah, I do. So I'm the type of guy who I work a lot, right? And I'm just continually working. Even when I get home, I'm still working and all that. And so my whole thing that I've always done is how is it that I can build money printers so that way I can be gone for an entire day, get back at the end of the night, and then check, the status of things, right? I'm not always there as far as notifications go, which is kind of rough on my end, right? So when it comes to that, I was kind of looking at how Liquid Loans sort of works, and I think I was kind of seeing something of like a money printer you can sort of build on there, where you put the pulse in, you get the USDL out, and then you're able to stake that USDL, and then I believe it was you get pulse back out of it, or sorry, you get loan out of it, and then you stake the loan. Sorry, and the loan token, then you can stake that, and then get pulse out of that. Yeah. Am I ringing any bells here, or did I just read the wrong thing here?
No, I got you. So, yeah, I can work through that. So, again, it comes back to to use Nate's example, kind of like talking to the crowd here. If you're not someone here who's just digs this every day, if you're going to watch us on the replay because you're a normal human and you have something else better to do on a Wednesday, I get it. A lot of good stuff to do, right? So, again, you just kind of adjust to, hey, I've got time, right? So, the same way that you might go buy Tesla, you're not, out here taking like leverage short positions. Like, again, it's all about how, like, where you're at in the game and how to use these things correctly. So for someone like Nate who says, hey, I get there's a good tool here. I like you guys. I understand it. I've got a pulse bag. I want to extract some yield. How do I do this in a way that's not dumb? So what he's describing is the stability pool. So the Nate strategy here would be, hey, I'm going to come check this thing once or twice a day. Let's walk through this here. So what he would do is take a collateral ratio that's, you could do as high as 1,000. Again, then you have to look at kind of the return side and like kind of your effort, your back size. There's a little bit to massage there, but let's say like 500%. So again, he's going to have to look at like a 60+% drop before he has anything to really pay attention to. So those do happen, but they don't really happen that often. You can only get sued by the SEC so many times. So when you look at this, so what something like Nate would do is one, he would not bother Gary Gensler. That would be the first step one to make sure you're safe. Step two would be say, hey, we're at 500%, right? So again, that would be taking out roughly 20% of kind of your bag, and then that would go in the stability pool. So the stability pool, you put in USDL. USDL is $1. This is risk off. So you do have to pay attention to the pulse price, but there's nothing else to worry about. USDL is $1. It's $1. It's $1, right? Now, the way the yield in the stability pool comes from is there's a loan emission early on. So loan token just gets paid out for being there. The other part is, again, it's what's on the tin, a stability pool. So when a vault gets liquidated, the USDL gets burned that would cover that pulse. So, and then that pulse gets paid out. So when you're in the stability pool, the net benefit is you're holding a stable coin, and you basically kind of have a rolling limit order for 10% minus markup on pulse. That's what this is. It's a limit order that fills at negative 10%. So someone sitting here with a vault, they're too aggressive, they get liquidated. That pulse basically gets paid out to the stability pool, and the stability pool, that USDL gets burned. So you're basically buying pulse minus 10% of whatever market price is, plus that loan emission. So the kind of money printer idea would be, you can take that loan, and as you keep scraping your loan rewards, you can stake the loan. The loan gets paid out off redemptions and the loan originations that come out. So it's got its own, again, kind of yield structure. So you could sell the loan or that loan token, or again, if you want to be very, very risk off. The other is to go ahead and stake it. So again, for the kind of like, again, plan for the Nate strategy here would be to say, hey, I need to be at a collateral level that if I come home from work late 2-3 days in a row, I'm burnt out. This is a whiskey day, not a beer day. I can't let this thing cause me a problem, right? Okay, so we're 300 kind of at a minimum, more like 500, give us that good range. And then we're keeping it primarily in the stability pool, because if it goes down, we just take USDL out, hit repay. It's that quick, all in one dApp, very smooth. You're not balancing other things. So there's going to be more aggressive strategies to do all kinds of stuff, but that strategy would be all inside of LL. and very, very simple. And yeah, the MCR guys have built some cool stuff. I got the inside scoop on seeing their front end. It's really neat. They're going to build cool stuff on top. And kind of going back to like why I liked LL so much, it's vanilla. It's just DeFi. Like it's lending, yield, stability. Like this is very basic stuff. It's not a Rube Goldberg. It's not, hey, if you take this monkey thing and you shill the bananas and then it turns into oranges and the oranges are juice. And it's again, that stuff's fun. Everyone has a good time, but this is just traditional, functional financial instruments everyone's done. And there's all kinds of great stuff that can build on top. But again, the idea is, again, you kind of use it how you use everything else. So again, for Nate, it would be, hey, we're 500%. Everything's inside of the DApp. You're not having to balance another DeFi protocol. And you basically have that window where all you'd have to do is basically through any of these other things, like check that pulse price, check the alerts and be, oh, it went down 30%. Nah, I don't really want to have to, I'm going to have a long weekend. It's Labor Day. We're partying and barbecuing. All right, we're going to move back and cushion that back more so I don't have to worry about it. And you go on about your day.
Yeah, and you only, if I heard you correctly, then you basically get liquidated for the percentage of, like, say, if it drops down to like 50%, but I'm only at 30% before it starts getting liquidated. Basically, that'd be a 20% liquidation at that point.
So if you're at, I was saying you take 20% as far as to be at that 500% collateral, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be how much is held versus how much is out. But a 500% collateral will like protect against like a 60% plus drop. I'd have to go check the math in my head. So again, barring black swan events, you're not going to have any 48-hour window where you see these 60% drops. So again, that also goes down less and less as projects get older and older, right? So even the SEC shenanigans that happened in a year, that drop wouldn't have been nearly as dramatic. Wouldn't have been fun. I'd rather not deal with it. Again, we'll work through all that stuff. But again, even the drop we saw was only because it's still very, very new. So again, that's the time goes out. These things get less sensitive to price. And again, you can be either more aggressive if you're a savvy user or just keep it up and be safe and not have to worry about things.
And the nice thing about it too is that this is for like mobile too. So like, let's say I'm out there and all of a sudden something, the SEC starts suing, right? And it's like, maybe just in case, right? So then I go and I start slapping, hey, I'm just gonna pull this out real quick so that way I don't get in trouble over here. And then as soon as that big drop does happen, I can literally just throw it right back in. Same sort of deal. Bam, we're set.
And again, this is about kind of like painting like what's the downside. So let's say again that you were at like say a 300% and the SEC drops 80. Okay, well if it drops 80 and you still, again, we're doing the Nate strategy, right? So we have most of our values in the stability pool. When it drops 80%, yeah, you would get liquidated. But if it keeps going down 80%, then it would function kind of like an inefficient stop loss. You could just buy back in and you'd buy at the bottom, right? So that's, again, it's one of those that you can kind of give the rose colored glasses of like, oh, when it drops 90%, then you would just buy the bottom. Most of the time, essentially, you have a buffer. There's not that much of a window where you're really at a loss as long as you're doing these things correctly, right? So again, it's just this balancing about using it as aggressive as you feel comfortable and like competent to handle, just like most financial instruments.
Okay, so Nate's strategy, trademark.
Stamp it, pull it.
Let's go.
I know you got some yield questions for sure.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, Nate dove into some good stuff there. I like that a lot. I guess this goes back, Walrus, back to what we originally said is you got to train users and your potential audience and customers on how to utilize this tool, right? So knowing that, do you guys have like a risk heat, like a kind of a heat map based on risk of how you can apply these, the strategies that you're recommending here? You've gone over some great strategies, but is there some type of an easy digestible, view that a user could see this and know what their risk level is for their appetite?
So
it's a loaded question. I know it's loaded.
No, it's not too bad. I think that's a really solid one. And it's something that I struggle with a bit. And it's kind of like what we referred to earlier is when does education become coaching, right? Like when is it financial advice versus education? So there's a few, the first part is don't, like I'm the first one to always say, hey, like do less, like don't touch stuff, right? Like if all these words are all gibberish, I'm speaking Latin, then don't do it. Like just, if you want to be involved in the ecosystem, you can go buy some loan token, stake it. Nothing's going to happen. You can just collect your yield. If you're wrong, everything's fine. Go play on the test nets, go through all these things. just take your time. Like there's never a reason to rush into this stuff. Like if crypto's going to go up 1,000x and you take an extra month, then cool. Then collect your 200x. You're fine, right? Like take your time with all this stuff. So, but to answer more directly is I kind of have a series of things that I'm going to do here pretty quick that are, again, kind of more in that vein of in between education and coaching. And then once we're live, then we can point toward and do some more like, look at what this wallet did. And again, a lot of that is also like, it's on the community, right? Like we want to do the minimal amount of coaching. We want to just offer cool DeFi, explain it, have it handled, be very productive for the ecosystem. And we want a lot of people on the outside to pick up some of that mantle. But we'll absolutely go through and add some more of that. Hey, this is probably too risky for you. Hey, this is pretty safe to say it's on the safe side. So there's always more of that coming out. I do have kind of a little series of things that I'm going to do to put out on that very topic, and then we can be more aggressive with, again, coaching for the air quotes once we're live.
I like that. I was just curious if there's going to be any visual representation, like, because a lot of people are more visual in the sense that you guys put out a lot of great documentation on your sites. I was just curious in that what you're saying is even far beyond what I was even expecting. I was just saying from a simplicity standpoint, like examples of what would be a risk level on a table so people could wrap their heads around some of this stuff.
So again, when you start putting like the lines on it, like, oh, this was safe. You said this was
financial advice. Yeah,
exactly. So it's not all that
legality.
Complicated, and there's tons of smart people. So smart guys do that. I can't be responsible. So go be a smart guy and put up cool stuff.
Roger. So yeah, one thing I was curious about.
Don't ask me, Tracker. Go build it, man. Give us a heat map.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, I was going to come back and ask you a few more questions about this. Let's dive into this now. So I'm curious. So did you actually ask I know we were asking why Pulse? I mean, obviously you guys seem to like, RH, but why Pulse? Of all the different, new networks coming out and everything, why that one?
The ecosystem just spoke to us, man. We were involved in a lot of different things, but if you look now, so like, again, you guys are involved in the ecosystem. How'd you guys get a hold of me? Just message me on Telegram. Hey, what's up, Walrus? We want to come talk. If I want to talk to Buck from Fiat Famous, just message him on Telegram.
All right, so you talk community, solid community. Gotcha.
Yep. Well, even just community in the sense that like normal people kind of just think about, hey, like these are people like-minded, but also just wanting to build cool stuff and be able to know who's building around and kind of, so I guess something between like community camaraderie and just trust overall. Hayden, the guy who's the founder at Uniswap, I don't really like that woke dude. He's kind of a douche, honestly. I'm not really a big fan, man. But I like ag, I'd like the devs that RH brought around. I resonate with a lot of what RH says. I like Jesse and LV and the guys from Power City. Buck for all of his super smooth. He's so PR and pleasant, isn't he, guys? Yeah, he's an asshole, right? But I like Buck too. Again, Togosh, there's just all these people that are building cool stuff, and that's who I wanted to build stuff around. So I think most of us that are successful here, we've probably been successful in general. Like most of us, again, if you're doing well here, you've done well in general. But like Togosh is an awesome guy. I'm very, very glad to have spent some time around him. He built a cool tool and I got to use it. And I got to use a tool that I knew who built it. Whether it's, there's just so many of these guys, Das Baum, he does stuff on Discord Syndicate. I've had that, analytical German guy tell me I'm wrong and dumb 100 times in Telegram rooms. Like this stuff comes and builds and grows. And we're at a spot now where in 2 years, most people won't realize how cool it was that almost everything built, they knew who that person was. Again, it's an avatar in some cases, but essentially on a first name. Like these are all people that I've spent 2 or 3 years around, essentially from the beginning of this stuff, talking and working together. The MCR guys, first name basis. Those guys just message me and say, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Talk to me about this. Okay, can we get your help here? I talked to Matt and Brandon from the Texan team and some of their guys. There was just some stuff we wanted to talk to. We hopped on a call today and we went out and talked. So it's not just the community that's like, when we go out to Miami and we do all this cool stuff, like the overall community is fun, but there's also just a sense of camaraderie that comes from people that just had a similar vein and wanted to build cool stuff. And that was what even got me like forward facing in the first place. So I was actually watching RH well before Hex launched, didn't get involved early in Hex because, again, I wasn't at that point in my kind of like personal crypto journey. I was watching this like I was watching a sports team. And then once I got involved, even in Hex, it was still a good length of time before once Pulse Chain came out. That was what brought me to the forefront. It was, hey, there's a group of people that already like similar things, that are pushing the same kind of narratives, that care about the same things I care about. We're going to go build an L1 and have this ecosystem that's like built in our image. Man, that stuff's cool as hell. And as this thing moves on and grows, you know, so many of us are going to get to look back and be like, hey, you remember when the SEC came after the chain? Hey, you remember when that thing launched? You remember when that guy did this thing? And like, this is like something that there's a huge community building together. And like, it genuinely matters to be able to build cool stuff, man. Like, it's part of everyone's here's personal story. Like, whether you're just, you know, someone who's just watching from the sidelines, getting to watch one of the most interesting things that's like played out, or you're a streamer, or you're people hopping on a channel or building stuff. It's just an amazing story to be a part of, man. It's just different when you're this close to people.
Well, I think it ultimately goes back to what you're saying is people are product of their surroundings, and the leader Orchard Heart has pulled us all together here to kind of like, you know, step it up and create things and build this ecosystem so it's organically grown and smart people tend to gravitate towards each other. So I think that's what you're kind of seeing too.
Yep.
Jeff, I know you had a question. I think you wanted to jump in and ask something here.
Well, you kind of led me right into it, and I've been wanting to ask this. How do you yourself and CC feel about the whole SEC attack on Richard?
So there's any time that you're that loud and sort of, to use an Andrew Tate term, anti-matrix, they're going to come at us eventually, right? So I didn't, you know, the timing always catches everybody off guard, but it's kind of we kind of figured, right? Like you're still caught off guard. So I don't want to say like we knew it was coming, but you kind of know it's in the cards there. So when you kind of know that stuff's coming, you don't have the same kind of visceral reaction. There's a few things right off the cuff. One is, I think it's written very poorly. And I think that kind of like says some of the sentiment that we have a problem with. I think that luckily, because of the way this community is built, it doesn't have the same issues that a lot of communities have. So XRP, Coinbase, XYZ, all these things that are sort of built on still being semi-legacy VC kind of stuff. When they get delisted, it's a problem. You can't delist us. We weren't listed anywhere. So because we're so DeFi oriented in the first place, it is an issue, but it's not anywhere near the same issue would be for a lot of places. Also, I think the idea that everything's a security is just, guys, what are we talking about? So I think that I guess the short side is I think that's very poorly written. I think the idea that those are user funds, that it's malice and fraud is silly. You know, again, like I think that's pretty simple for anyone in the ecosystem. I think that a lot of that case will actually be settled by other cases that get handled before then. When it comes to XRP, the amicus briefs that have been filed against the SEC about what investment contract states. So the SEC has all kinds of reasons to wanting to quell a lot of these things. And I think it's pretty obvious what they've gone after. They've gone after loud things they think they can win, or things that actually threaten power, which is stable coins and true payment rails and things like that with XRP. It's the reason that Paxos. So everybody remembers like when BUSD was in all that hot water and it was a big issue. So that the issuer of BUSD is Paxos. Now Paxos is issuing the PayPal dollar. So I guess it wasn't that big an issue, was it? The issue was who they were issuing it for and who the players are. So I think we're seeing, again, I guess what most of us would expect is general politics in the US on this. And then overall, for like how it unfolds from there, I think that most of this issue with securities will get pretty wrapped up in the next little bit, and that we can go on to doing big boy stuff and stop letting random unelected bureaucrats who barely understand the tech come bother us. And then on that same vein, they've already kind of talked about, oh, we're going to be shifting to AI and a few of these things here. So I think that they're sort of already on the back foot. I think that XRP is going to finish winning. I think the Amicus Briefs and Coinbase being backed by BlackRock, I think they're going to win as well. And then I think that that will basically unwind a lot of these other issues that they have, again, including with RH. So I actually think that most of the stuff with RH will be handled from other litigation before he actually has to go and deal with some of this stuff.
Sure. I think I'm actually one of the few people that my theory is that everybody I talk to, and actually I was talking to Rags the other day about the same topic, and everybody thinks that he's going to fight this tooth and nail to the end, and he very well might. I have this opinion that he's going to say, okay, cool, let's settle. Here's your money. Now I'm exempt from the security list. Perfect timing. Thanks for the good press. And goodbye. That's my theory.
I would say that, again, however it wraps up is kind of one thing, but I think that the first part would be the jurisdictional claim on New York is laughable. So one is, I think you go beat them up on jurisdiction, put up a W, and then you kind of stand behind a whole big bag of dye and say, y'all really want to keep pressing this? So I think that the first part is you just delay and let XRP and Coinbase and these other things basically kind of come fight the beginning, because it basically the rest of the shenanigans. The only reason I think that any of this fraud, misallocation stuff was brought up is because you basically can't assassinate his character in any way. So if it starts with just, hey, here's this big drawn out, is this security, is not, it's not really that interesting. But unless you can point at the guy who twerks in Gucci, like, you can't bring any of the other stuff up, right? Like, all right, well, now it's an easier case, right? So I think that most of that is honestly just character assassination. So really this whole thing comes to, is this security? Are they investor funds? The rest of this is color. So I think that essentially the security question gets answered from litigation that happens ahead of time. And then the rest of it's just kind of a domino, goes away. And then I think that if you basically starting with jurisdiction, that it's easy. Basically, I would basically delay, let everybody else fight it out, and then you handle it from there. So I think however he decides to kind of wrap it up, I don't think what ends up with him will actually be like net from that case. I think these other cases are essentially going to handle it ahead of time.
Sure. I know several times he's even been on record. I've seen him in video himself talk about EOS settling all the time. And he's never, when he's spoken about it, he's never indicated it in a poor light. Honestly, I felt like he almost said it positively, like it was a smart move by them.
If you look at traditional finance anywhere else, SEC fines, it's just the light bill, the cost of doing business. It's just the cost of doing business. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, right? You know, there's the, do we want to just take a stand and drag the stuff out, which Brad Garlinghouse has done. And I think that everybody should just give a pleasant golf clap for those guys, just saying, you know what, let's do this. Screw you guys. We're not doing this. So those guys have held it up a lot. I could care less about XRP particularly. I think that a lot of stuff that Ripple does is actually gross. They're very supportive of CBDCs, but they wanted to draw a line in the sand and said, hey, you know, again, those guys are free to do what they want, right? I'm not a fan of the CBDC stuff. They are. That's fine. We can disagree. But they drew a line in the sand and said, hey, okay, well, we can all fight about that, but this dude is not telling us how the industry goes. So Brad Garlinghouse is an absolute gangster for that. Well done. And I think that it's saying a lot of things the Blockchain Association have done about just saying, hey, the industry will go argue. We can do all these things, but these guys are not telling us how we run our stuff. These are not securities. It's not their house. That stuff is very, very positive. So I think we should all give those guys the tip of the hat. And then as soon as they win, then we can go back to fighting about CBDCs.
Sure. I mean, if XRP isn't a security who actually has employees that they have to sell XRP to pay, then I don't see how then anything in the RH ecosystem is a security. But anyway, Will, I know you had a question, buddy. I know you've been waiting to ask it.
Yeah, so I'm just a little peanut brain diamond hand over here, and this is my first time really interacting with liquid loans and learning anything about this, and I'm sure it's going to be for a lot of folks on the replay and a lot of the folks watching this live. Walrus, for folks like me, where can we go to get the 101, to get the baseline education level for how to use your program, how to find out everything that it means, like read the white paper? Obviously, you've got your websites and your Twitters and your Telegram and things. what would be the starting point for folks to go to if they wanted to learn more about your program?
Yeah, I mean that's it right there. Just start with that one-on-one. The white paper, I want to tell people to go there, but no one's gonna read that thing. No one really cares. It's important to be there for the people who want to read it in that form or fashion. Most people want to take the time and see something more visual. So inside of the DAP, there's all the videos there. We have the best explainer. If you go to the Liquid Loans explainer, that's the best video ever done in crypto. Like, come at me, guys. Show me something better. Like, our explainer, that walkthrough is absolute fire, period. So you can start with the explainer, and from there we have we have content for days about, hey, how this works, how this works, how this works, how this works. There's tons of how-tos. So you'll be throwing up before you're running out of content when it comes to like explanations and education from us. So start at the beginning and go from there. It'll probably be 2024 before you're done, and then you can ask me any questions you guys want. But we have all the content, man. Start with the explainer, get the overview. Inside of the DAP, you can see all the videos, and there's individual videos in there that actually explain each of these mechanics. You can walk through all that stuff. And then we're going through right now. So we're about to add the dispute monitors for fetch, and then we'll have the testnet back on, and then everyone can go through everything on there. And then so start with the content and then go to the testnet. Like, everyone look at me. Go to the testnet. Do not have the first transactions you're ever doing be with live money and sweaty palms. Don't do that. Like, go to the testnet. Like, that's what that stuff's for. Even after launch, like, go in there, play with these things. It'll all be there. And you can take a chance to video. Okay. Click a button. Move. Okay. So, all right. The video says this. Okay. I went here. I took a loan. I took USDL. It's in the stability pool. All right. It's in the stability pool. Confirm. Cool. Like, that's the magic. So it's going through the content on there, starting with the DAP, just clicking buttons, and use the testnet first. Like, again, don't let real money and sweaty palms have you in there like freaking out. Like, that's it. Like, start with education, go through the testnet, and then stuff's way easier. Take your time.
Good deal. Super quick. Want to shout out everybody watching. Appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate Wallace coming on the show. Little quick shout out to our Telegram group. If any of y'all ever have questions, like, every one of us in here really, really thoroughly enjoy being in that Telegram, helping people. Any questions you get confused on, please stop by. Instagram, Twitter, basically have all of it. So like I said, thank you all for coming. And we have more special guests that are going to be on the show. One of them rhymes with dollar cost hippo, and the other one rhymes with rags to bitches. So we have those coming on soon, and we're really excited about that. And yeah, that's it. I'm trying to think of anybody else.
Everyone needs to go like and subscribe to these guys. Like, these guys took the time to reach out, and then we had another call to go through a few things to make sure these guys were obviously super accommodating, which is cool. Like, go like and share these guys, right? Like, it's the streamers and the content stuff, right? Like, this isn't TradFi stuff where, like, I'm not going to be on CNBC next week. All this kind of engagement stuff, like, these guys do for free because they think this stuff is awesome. Like, make sure you back these guys up and go through and support them. Come and ask cool questions. Like, this is where all the stuff really happens. So it's always important to make sure you support the streamers and that cool stuff. Go through and check all these things. Dollar cost hippo is awesome. That guy's the G, very savvy, has his own vibe, and brings a separate audience. Rags, Brandon's an absolute legend, very savvy, another Texas boy. So both of those shows, I'm sure, are going to be absolute fire from these guys. And again, support the people who are taking time to do cool stuff and put out badass content for everybody.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, but no, the Telegram group in the description, DJ and Roundtable, we'd love to talk to you guys. And that talk I had with Brandon went really well. Super cool guy. He spoke really well about you, and vice versa. I know you had good things to say about him, and I'm super excited about that.
Smart guy, man. And DCC too. He's man, he's clever like a fox, man. He's such a class clown and such a personality that sometimes it hides his IQ, but that guy's sneaky, man.
A sly intelligence. Like,
I would party with him, but I'm not playing cards with that son of a bitch. Not a chance, man.
Funny enough, he went to the casino with somebody I know not too long ago.
There you go. Yeah, not doing it.
Tracker, you had something to add?
Yeah, I do want to piggyback off that Richard Hart thing. I thought that was, I I know Richard Hart's sitting over there. You can see his tweets coming out all the time, and he's putting a feel out there for a lot of people. You know, he would love more than anything to be in front of that committee and just going out there and putting everyone to shame and schooling them in front of them. He has no problem. I mean, that's what he wants more than anything. He wants to train everybody what this is all about and how just effed up everything is. Now, could he pay the price if he does that? Sir, I'm sure he's weighing his options here, but I just think from a Richard Hart's perspective, he would love to get out there in front of that committee. What bigger stage than that? I mean, see him out there talking and schooling these people that have no clue what they're talking about. It would be like somebody speaking calculus while people are doing a basic arithmetic. So it'd be.
It seems like that's what Richard. Oh. You go ahead.
What's up?
I got to see him. I got to see him talk to Senator Sherman, man. Like Senator Sherman, man. Like that Metamucil regular fiber ass senator. Good God, man. Like, oh, I mean that. I would pay huge amounts of money to see a 20-minute conversation between him and RH. I got to see that guy with his double Windsor polyester ties just argue with Richard and Gucci. There are just few things that would fuel my soul more than that. There's a lot going on there, man. I think that, Hoskins has done a good job. Charles from the Cardano, he's doing a good job. He's an academic, very from that speed. But I just think that there's few, I mean, people watched a lot of, what's that dude's name? Amber, whatever, and Johnny Depp. They thought that trial was good. Woo! Daytime TV has never seen anything like RH at a Senate committee hearing. So that would be something that's good TV, boys.
Actually, so what I was thinking of was there seems to be a new trend in like personalities, right? So when you're thinking about, I think it would be absolutely hilarious to watch Richard Hart walk in, with what it is that he's usually wearing, being a non-humble Richard, right? And just start like literally schooling everybody and doing it in that condescending, like asking questions, but it's asking a question with only one answer to it, I think that would be the most hilarious thing in the world. And you know what that kind of reminds me of is a little bit of like back in 2016 when Trump, came onto the scene and everything was about as boring as could be because it's politics, right? But then all of a sudden Trump comes in and he's like, yeah, lock her up. It's like, whoa, okay, hello. And he just starts going crazy. And of course he got elected. And I've been noticing that it seems like with the new generations coming in and everything, new voter sectors and all that, it's like you're getting more of these personalities that are not like politicians. You're getting personalities that are personalities. And I'm kind of seeing the same thing happening when it comes to like saying the financial sector, where a lot of the traditional guys, they don't want to come over to the crypto space because they're like, it's just a bunch of jokes and Pepe memes. What's going on here? But yet we're making more money than them. Weird. In a much shorter amount of time, right? And yet at the same time, then you get personalities like Richard Hart, right? And so this is kind of like where we're making this comeback around, where it's like, okay, now we got people like Richard in the crypto space coming in and smashing into the traditional space now in the professional space. And I don't know, I see this as just a really big theater. It's okay. I'm getting my popcorn out, man. I'm just watching this go down while making money, man.
You know what's interesting? The SEC used to almost never lose in court. They almost used to never lose, and you still see, if you look at the percentages, that they lose a very small percentage of time when they go to court. But if you look recently at more recent cases in the last 5 years plus, they've started to lose a lot more cases than they had previously. So they used to be closer to 100% win rate. So what does that tell you? It tells me that they're starting to try to cast a wider net into what they're calling securities. And by doing so, they're clearly overstepping the bounds, which is also what the courts are saying. And so we actually did an entire show on this. Every time there's big news, we do emergency streams, talk about the news. So if you guys want to hear our takes on it, I'm not going to go into it all again. But we did do a show, so feel free to look back and take it. But that's a really important thing to think about. If the SEC continues to lose more cases or a larger percentage of the cases that they bring to court, there's a reason for that. And generally speaking, the reason is that they're overstepping what they're actually, set up to do.
The last quick thing on the SEC is that they're unelected. they're not spending their own money, and they cherry pick their results. So they don't have a high win rate because they're just so gifted. They're spending everybody else's money. They don't lose anything. So even if you look at something like, especially like RH, so part of this is it's funny. I've talked about this a few times. Is I've like I've been doing a lot more like in-person stuff. So like Consensus and some of these other events in Denver. And if you think about it from an SEC standpoint, don't think about the SEC as this like conglomeration. It's just a bunch of people, right? So if you're the dude at the SEC and you see Richard, you go, wait a minute, this dude raised $1 billion. Oh, I'm about to get promoted. That's what this is. If you look at that, cat, you think, oh, this isn't my money. If I lose, nothing happens. I don't get fired. We're unelected. Nothing. There's no problem. But if you win, boy, you just made a meal ticket. And that's the same thing with Gary. Does anyone know who the head of the SEC was before him? Or before that? Nope. Gary's a rock star, man. Like some people hear about it, right? Like, but in general, how many unelected bureaucrats does anyone know the first name? Or if you see GG, you know who they mean. That ain't good game. That's Gary Gensler, man. Like that dude is an effing rock star in the scope of bureaucracy. So yeah, there's a lot individually for him. Like the SEC is litigation proof. They're not spending their own money. And L doesn't mean the same thing to them as it does to anyone else. So it's wild to see like how an asymmetrical game this is. And it's the same reason that most like district attorneys and these things have like high conviction rates is one, they just don't prosecute things they won't win. They settle everything. And again, so it's a rigged game. And they also will push if they go and present certain things to certain people, if their case is weak, that person will just settle and they won't push them to take a 0 because if you lose at the big time, they're going to hit you with everything. So it's the same thing when they give all these plea deals for, 80% of these things, all basically, again, we're talking about criminal litigation, 80% of it's all just drug charges, right? And what you end up with is people with overloaded public defenders who, even if they have a decent case, they say, hey, here's 2 years, you can get out in a year. If you F up though, and you push me, I'm going to give you 10. So no one wants to go play that game. They add another conviction rate and they take another check mark. So like the game is rigged from the beginning, whether it's civil or criminal litigation. And like it's the nature of the game in the US. Gets into like how bonding works. And like, we don't even have to go down that rant. Like I'll lose hair I don't have. So like, but the point is again, like that number is a ref. Anytime you start to see things at 90% when it comes to like litigation, that's not because you're good. That's because the game ain't fair. Like that's how that stuff works. So the SEC is not fighting fair, but again, it is what it is. And I think that we're going to end up with better rather than worse news when it comes to the stuff that directly affects the ecosystem.
Damn, Walrus. And when you said unelected, I thought you meant the Federal Reserve, the Bank Committee, the FDIC. Every organization that's out there is unelected for the most part.
CFTC, FBI, NSA.
If you want to work you up your line, just keep working up the pillar and work your way up to that little thing called the BIS to go along with it. That's a big boy in the block.
Man, it's Tracker. That's selfish. Don't you can't bring up the BIS this late in the stream. We'll be here all night.
Yeah, we can't go down this whole rabbit hole. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But hey, I did have one other question for you, and I'm curious about this, and this is kind of just understanding with the direction where like loans. You guys are. I don't want to steal the thunder. I know we're going to talk about this, but so you guys eventually, you guys are going to come out and launch. Then you're going to have, I'm assuming, some type of roadmap laid out for the next. I don't know how far out are you guys foreseeing it? 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? It's a very loaded, I know, because in the sense that depending on how the landscape changes, you might have to pivot and change directions and different things. But do you guys see yourself staying within the Pulse Chain ecosystem or potentially branching out? Or once again, is it more of a, wait and see, and let's just get things kind of going and ramped up. And then from there, it'll start to scream at us on what the next direction should be.
So the first thing is like, you got to dance with the one that brought you. So it's all about executing perfectly, having these things out. So we're wrapping up with Fetch. When Fetch is good, we'll be out, we'll be here. Pulse Chain's our baby. And it goes far beyond just the fact that LL is built on top. Like it matters to us, right? Like me, CC, Dave, all the guys on the team. We were in Pulse Chain before LL was a thing. Like we were already here, right? Like this is our house, right? Again, you guys were able to reach out to me. You guys didn't have to go through someone's assistant. There wasn't some corporate email. just message me on Telegram. You got a hold of me just like everybody else. And that stuff's important, right? So it's all about handling that. It's nailing 101 first, having these things perfect. That's the reason we go through all this extra effort with audits and things like that. There's a lot going on in the space. So that first 2-3 months after launch will very much be, okay, how much is the community picked up? Where do we need to pick up? How's everything looking? We're always wanting to be, chain agnostic in a lot of ways and keep building cool stuff and kind of bring that community effect to other places, right? But there's a lot of stuff on Pulse Chain that we want to be involved in as well. Like there's no shortage of cool stuff to build. So the order of operation will probably change, but we want to be on other chains for not just for ourselves, but to extend the reach of the community, right? Like, what is it always like? Your voice can't change people's minds if they don't hear the words, right? Like you got to get in front of people. So, being on other ecosystems is important. But again, like Pulse Chain's our baby. Like it'll never be left behind. There'll always be more to do there. So it will kind of be that variety approach of just kind of order of operations. But myself and the team have always been like, hey, like let's keep building cool stuff. But we're a little more corporate. We're a little slower. We're always going to be very, very like, hey, is it perfect? Is it audited? Is the front end perfect? Is the education perfect? Is the logo like? We're just going to keep moving through all those things, right? So again, part of like, I don't know if anyone knows. Some people are interested when we're going to launch, like as soon as it's ready. I don't care. The legal issue is not a problem. We're not timing the bottom. There's not it doesn't matter what equinox phase we're in, the moon phase. None of that stuff matters. We're finishing up the last audit. LL is all finished. Liquid loans, front end, contracts, audited, perfect. Halborn did a great job following up afterwards. We're very happy with that. As soon as the fetch audits are done, boom, like we're putting a date and like we're putting stuff out to market. Pulse Chain Safe. Again, it's a simplified version for multi-sig contracts that went live. CC just put that out today. We kind of quietly did that. That's out. Our audits are done. Like it's just fetch. And then again, we're going to see so much come after that with not just the front end and all the cool stuff that we have going on with fetch, but with every other project that's waiting on fetch. Like you just see this big like rolling of projects that will come out. And again, the MCR guys are building on top. There's other people that are building neat things that are involved. Power City has all their automated stuff that's built on top. There's a whole ecosystem kind of coming around some of the things that we're building either directly or indirectly. And like, that's the magic, right? So we'll see all that expand, see where the ecosystem is. And it's just an order of operation, but we're far from done building. Like there'll be all kinds of cool stuff.
Damn, I thought I was here listening to Richard Hart speak for a moment there. I was waiting for you to say another 2 more weeks.
It's 2 more audits now.
There you go. 2 more audits.
2 more audits.
No, that
Two
sounds
more
good.
audits,
Man. That sounds fantastic. No, but that was solid. Okay, appreciate it.
And just to kind of explain the 2 weeks thing, I think for like we kind of know where it comes from, but we don't know where it comes from. The reason that stuff comes from is like whenever you're doing this dev stuff is you'll be 90% done is 50% of the way to launching. Like that's why that like 2 weeks is you're like, hey, there's like one thing, and then it's one thing, and then it's one thing, and then it's polishing, and like you're 90% done. Like you have this like almost tangible. So like LL has been like up on testnet running great for how long now? And it's like, oh yeah, but we still have time to go over there, right? So like and then the thing is like stuff has got to be perfect. Like sometimes we forget, like again, it's no shade. The PulseX guys use the most audited, most forked code in history and had a bug. Like shit happens. Stuff is hard. There's a lot going on here. So that stuff happens. And again, PulseX is great. There's V2. It's handled. We went and did great stuff. That's a little different than some of the stuff that we have. But again, it just goes to show that there's problems. The Shiba Inu stuff just went wrecked. Multi-chain wrecked. The balancer boosted pulls. This does not affect the Fux guys, so we don't have to worry about it particularly. Wrecked. There's just problem after problem that comes up, and especially when you have immutable code, it's not okay that I say it's good. It's not okay that the team says it's good. It's got to be Halborn, and then we want to have the guys at Teller come help with. Like we want to have this thing so bulletproof that like there's just almost no chance that we have problems. Like good is not good enough. Like good is the enemy of perfection. So yes, we're going to be a little slower. Yes, there's 2 more audits. Yes, the code is up and the test net's up because like that's what it takes to actually get immutable stuff out that's right, that doesn't effing break. When you put out normal software, if you go put out a Madden game, the people who built Madden want Madden to work. The people who play Madden want Madden to work. And the people you're playing Madden with want Madden to work. That ain't how blockchain works. When you build stuff in blockchain, everybody wants to break your stuff and take your money. You can't build stuff that everybody wants to work. You build stuff that every person is trying to break and steal your money. And it's immutable. You don't get a second chance at these things. That's why that stuff's so important. That's why Halborn touched it. That's why Teller touched it. That's why we touch it. That's why we have AI stuff that touches it. That's why there's testnets. All these things are about making those things work. Yeah, it's slow. Yeah, it takes time. I don't give a shit. You shouldn't give a shit. You want stuff to be perfect. And so that when it comes out, it just works. And it's beautiful tech that you can use for a long time with a ton of front ends and cool stuff built on top. And we all go down the road saying users unaffected, LL unaffected, Pulse chain unaffected, Hex chain unaffected. That's what we want.
Walrus, I was just being a smart. No, I was being a smart ass, but that was well said. Actually, I'm a software engineer. Trust me, I get it, man. I get it. I get it. It's always something. It's either something was missed or something has to be done. But you're right. When you go into crypto, it has to be released because, like you said, everyone's trying to exploit you in every which way. So it has to be rock solid. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Final question for you. I know you're the head, the global head of growth and partnership. What is the biggest pain in the ass you got to deal with? I'm curious. I'll take it off from there.
Man, part of it is I just love, you know how like you hear some people on Twitter like, oh, when I make it, I won't be on Twitter like arguing in spaces. I absolutely like, I'm still gonna be like, I'm not leaving. I actually love this stuff. So part of it is I actually enjoy all the gritty like engagement stuff. I think the biggest issue is I'm trying to think how to quite word it. It's not bad actors. It's people who don't understand, that are just bitter and try to throw shade at people building cool stuff. And because this thing is so digital and online, people can't kind of like separate through. So someone will just be LL's a rug pull, Pulse Chain's a scam, the DGen Roundtable guys are all idiots. And it's hard to like really segregate through that stuff. So to me, it's hard. It's kind of hard to find some of that balance between, if somebody calls me an ass, if they just think I'm an ass, like that's fine. Like, I mean, again, I can give you guys a laundry list of reasons for that, right? But so to me, it's about like trying to find ways to interact with people in kind of a fair way. Like if someone thinks that LL sucks, like you have such a hard time between saying, all right, do they even know what they're saying? Are they just trolling? Or are they an educated person that like, hey, they've got something of value. They could change their mind. They've got some input. Cool. Let's talk. So to me, it's about actually just trying to find ways to like go through and like communicate with everyone in like a fair way, because it's so easy to like, you know, someone comes to Telegram, oh, you guys, blah, blah, ban. Like, so to me, it's the balancing act between trying to find ways to communicate with people. And this stuff's so hard and so complicated that it's just tough to communicate on it. So I guess I would say my favorite part's the communication. The worst part is communication, where people can go through all these things. And like, I help a lot with people that have compromised and scam wallets, and it absolutely breaks my heart to talk to those guys. But it's something that's important that I've taken a role. We've done some cool stuff with, the How To Pulse team and different places trying to help with that stuff. But it's just so hard, and to communicate all these things is difficult. So I think it just comes down to just that balancing act between doing cool things and still wanting to help like every individual person and trying to do things at scale. So I think that's what it is. I think it's balancing between wanting to deal with every user in a fair way, but they're not fair back, and trying to balance kind of the negative social media, people just being short versus like wanting to reach out and individually educate people. It takes a lot of time. So I have a lot of anxiety, and I because this is like what I do all the time. I care a ton about this stuff. It matters to me. That's it. So it's just, sometimes I have a balancing act between like I reach out to so many people, some of the DM, like, all right, let me show y'all something real quick. Let me see.
But I like that though. There are a lot of toxic bastards in the industry. That's for sure.
All right. So let me end this. Okay. Let's see here. So, all right. So you guys see the conversations here?
It's a few of them.
Oh yeah.
Holy moly!
I'm looking for me, for my name.
No, keep going. You'll get to Jeff eventually.
No, I think I'm blocked.
Are you ready to plug in AI at this point?
Probably.
Jeez, dude.
I'm only back a couple of
It's
months.
brutal.
This is April.
That's brutal.
And remember, some of these are groups.
That's a lot.
If we have another question, we can keep going. I just think this is important.
So I'd say this, Walrus.
Like,
Maybe the biggest
here.
challenge. Maybe the biggest challenge for you is how do you turn this shit off occasionally?
Mostly my wife handles that. I don't really just turn off.
I got you.
This is just Telegram. But I have Twitter, we have Signal, we have other things, but like this thing keeps going.
So Walrus, while you're scrolling through there, tell people where they can find you on all of these platforms.
So Telegram, obviously Telegram is very easy to get a hold of me. So Telegram is the easy one. Always be careful. I don't want to dig this one too much. I just had someone that I've spent time with since before the Pulse Chain sacrifice. He's an older cat. He's a firefighter. He's a very, very just staunch ass dude, a very good guy. He talked to a fake long vacation from Power City for over a year. Over a year, this scammer spent time and answered a few DMs back and forth. And then finally, this guy asked the wrong question and he sent him a scam link and it cost this guy 5 figures. It's really upsetting. So by all means, take time on Telegram, verify multiple sources. If people just have basic questions, just tagging me on Twitter is pretty easy. I'm pretty responsive there. Telegram, if you have something going on, if it's important, we also have something that's really cool. We have an anonymous ticketing system at LL. So if you have something like very LL blockchain related and you don't want to dox anything else, you can use the anonymous ticketing system. It's awesome. We built it for a reason. So again, it's kind of that variety of just depending on what you need. So reach out to me however everybody can. I'm happy to help. I genuinely love doing this stuff. I try to answer everybody. I love crypto. I love the community. I've got people that just I spend time with, man. Like I've helped, we've helped an older lady that I'm not gonna mention name from Georgia. She's the absolute just definition of a Southern belle. I answer all kinds of people. I talked to Rags earlier. I try to hit the meetups. Like I like to be very, very associated. I like the smaller connections. I like doing the group here on the panel. So Twitter, Telegram's the easiest. Whatever y'all need, man.
Now, for Liquid Loans, where's the best place for people to follow for the most updated news? Is it Twitter? And if it is, can you shout that out? If it's Telegram, can you shout out exactly what the place is to find you?
So I absolutely will. Actually, y'all should blame Jeff. I don't have a link. So I'm just gonna sandbag the host because he's here.
I was vetting you out first.
So that's it, Kat. I don't even know if I'm in yet. Like, let me know if I'm in yet. So once I'm in, then I can figure it out. So the tweets are the easiest. Like, it's just real quick. It's all there. Most of we put out dev updates. I put out a lot of content on YouTube. So I think for density of information, it's definitely our YouTube, LiquidLoans.io. Twitter is obviously the fast-paced stuff, and then you can obviously follow myself as well on Twitter. I think that's the easiest stuff. Our website is loaded with content. We have over 200 blog articles. Like, that stuff barely ever gets talked about. We have over 200 blog articles, and that's not only just for content on our stuff, but for content in general and SEO and expanding that reach. We have, Google listings. We've ranked high for a lot of different keywords, and all that stuff is about building, building the bear market. So when someone goes and looks for scam wicks, we pop up high. When they look for admin keys, we pop up high, along with all this other stuff. So we want to go and take advantage of all those things. And that's, again, kind of the magic of our, cypherpunks and sport codes kind of demeanor. It's like, that's our area to help Pulse Chain, right? Like, we've got you guys, and there's, these Westcott cryptos, and there's just, there's the SJs, like there's all these different personalities. Like, let those people do what's great. Like, we've got, crazy builders like Rags who talk very much about freedom that I'm glad you guys are going to have on. You got DCC who's, making fun of whatever. I can't even repeat half the stuff that guy says. That guy's a character, man. I love him. So, like, you have all these personalities. only so many people are going to resonate with me. Like, we're going to do our thing. We're going to put out blogs. We're going to be SEO. We're going to stand up and be professional. So when you guys have somebody who's a square, when someone's got like, 2 first names, then okay, cool. Send them to me. They'll probably connect with some of my content. If you got someone more loose and like needs energetic, they're a Doge fan and on Robinhood, they're probably not going to buy into my game. Like, send them to Westcott, let them get in front of DCC, let somebody, grab their imagination. So you guys do a great job with bringing on the people you have on. I think those shows are going to be fire. And then, you kind of get people where they matter. So like, we do the blog stuff, I wear blazers, I'm a little more loose tonight. We're having a good time on the DJ and Roundtable, but in general, I stand up straight, and I kind of give us that side of it. So take advantage of where people are, use the blogs. Like, we've got a ton of tools, man. Ton of tools.
Yeah, you always making me look bad. You're always in a blazer. I'm in a t-shirt and a hat.
Coast everything.
Yeah.
I should have tell and everything.
Every time I hit you up on Twitter, I see you on Twitter talking to everybody, interacting. I've been seeing you a lot responding to, what's his name? Lamont Black. I think he was like an economics professor or something like that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. He's one of the few people that like edifies my like nerdy like complex to bring up random stuff. So as he's dug into some of the stuff with staking, I've been really like digging into like wanting to bring up. So him and actually Heartbeat brought up, there's some really interesting rules that go way back about states and currency versus like if they're gold backed, that kind of cool stuff. And then when you get into like looking at staking ladders, something I've brought up before, just doesn't always resonate, is like that's like a coupon bond, and coupon bonds are like these bonds that have scheduled basically interest payouts, and that's similar to how a ladder looks. So Hex is one of those interesting things that it looks different versus it looks different as a single event versus as a ladder. Like, it actually like looks like a little bit of a different instrument. So it's kind of fun to kind of go engage with Lamont Black because he has a very financial instrument. What is this thing versus, the Kareem or a hexologist or a chaos, like the people inside the ecosystem have their view, and it's just fun to engage with him. So I've been trying to, challenge him on a few things, bring some cool stuff up with him recently, just because it's fun to, swap up the vocab.
Sure. He's pretty sharp. He has a really, really good grasp on T-shares. From what I have seen him post, he's really accurate on it.
Yeah, he's that, and I think that's why the community's been so excited about him as a skeptic. There's a few of those like weird terms that I really like. One is that Shakespearean quote where he says, "It's not that I love Caesar less; it's that I love Rome more." And the other one is that like hate people with a perfect hate. Those are two things that I think Lamont does well, and why it resonates. So he didn't like Hex initially, was uncomfortable, but it wasn't just like disdain, right? He looked at it and was like, this doesn't make sense. And then was waiting on information and is processing and challenging. Like, even though he's being receptive, he's very challenging. Like, he's very clear. Hey guys, I'm not a Hex fan. No. What is this word? Like, he's challenging these ideas. So that stuff's really cool. And then I like that term, it's not that I love Rome less. It's that or not that I love Caesar less, that I love Rome more. I love that quote. And it's like, hey, if you're a Hex Max, you a Pulse, but any of these kind of things, very cool. Stick to your thing, bang your own drum, but don't hate because we're different, right? Like, if they suck, that's fine. So like you can love your thing more, just don't love everyone else less. Like, we still agree on 90% of this. We're still trying to pump the chain. We're still trying to be pro freedom and censorship resistance and build cool stuff. So it's cool to love your own more, just don't love the rest less. So I think those are two things that kind of fill in with that Lamont Black that are super positive.
Good stuff.
Guys, I will say, if the last half an hour didn't inspire confidence, not just in liquid loans, but in Walrus as a person, right? This is the kind of person that you want representing your product, because he made it perfectly clear that, like, despite the fact that they might be a little bit slower releasing their product, the reason for that is they want it to be perfect, right? It's kind of the same ethos that surrounds Richard Hart and Hex and the Pulse Chain ecosystem, right? It's that same ethos of releasing a product that it's immutable, so that you're immune to the attack surface that is part and parcel of software, right? And then of cryptocurrency as a whole. And so there was one comment that Walrus had earlier, but he was kind of blasting through his explanation. it was a comment from Zenith, and he asked specifically, is liquid loans over collateralized? And then Walrus was just like, yes, we are over collateralized. I think people underestimate exactly how important that is. Walrus, can you go over exactly why it's important? Number one, not just for a protocol that's like a lending protocol, right? But for a protocol that's also issuing a stable coin, why that's important that you're over collateralized. And, you know, versus some of these banks that we know don't exactly keep money in their safes, or in some of these like other exchanges that, you know, get rugged because they can't redeem their customers' funds.
Well, you pretty much laid it out right there. Sometimes people want their money back, and if it's not there, it's not there, right? So there's a few things about over collateralization. There really is pros and cons. So for us, there's no discrepancy. So the reason it's so important is because a dollar is supposed to be a dollar. So a dollar used to be a certificate of deposit, that there was a dollar's worth of some value behind it. Now it is a Fed promissory note, just fairy dust. So when it comes to USDL or these things, it's not just that it's over collateralized, which it is. It's that you can verify it. Don't trust me. Don't trust anyone else. Go look yourself. It is on chain and verifiable. So whenever you have things that are fractionally reserved, there is certain places where it kind of makes sense, but like many things, it gets perverted when it gets to the modern variation of where we are now. And eventually somebody comes up asking, and there's nothing left, right? And we've seen what happens with this, whether it's First Republic, whether it's FTX, whether it's Three Arrows, it's Celsius, it goes on and on and on, of where when you can't verify and people get aggressive, what happens? So there's something really special about what we have that's not just over collateralized, but it's individual and not rehypothecated and not pooled. So whenever there's a collateral ratio, there's a protocol collateral ratio, but you have your own collateral ratio. No, nothing I do breaks your stuff. Nothing that Jeff does, nothing that Nate does, nothing that Jay does. No one else breaks your stuff. Your stuff is individual. It's your vault. It's individualized. Your mint is there. It's on chain. You can see when you put in Pulse. You can see when you took out USDL, and you have your own ratio. That USDL that you minted is backed up by your Pulse. You don't have to ask anyone else. You don't have to verify with anyone else. It's right there on chain. That's what trustless is really about. You're able to go and do these things on your own. You don't got to come ask. So regardless of whatever goes on with Loan Token or myself or anyone else, you don't have to come ask me how to do these things. You don't have to come ask me for a loan. You don't have to go get a credit score. You don't have to scan your eyeball. You don't have to do any of that stuff. The code is there. You do what you want. It's your baby. It's your prerogative. You're a self-sovereign person. So these things are backed up so that we can verify, so that everyone else who uses USDL can trust that there's Pulse to back that, so that that peg is verified. And then as an individual user, you know that what you're doing is all clear and on-chain and individualized. Like it's the beginning of what all these things were meant to be in the first place. Like stop trusting people, stop trusting protocols, don't trust Silvergate, don't trust First Republic, don't trust Evergrande, don't trust Community, or what is the Country Garden, whatever that big player is in the CCP. Don't trust any of those people. Don't trust me. Do it on chain. That's what it's for. It's the whole point.
Good stuff. Man, I wish we could keep going. This is a lot of good information. This is by far my favorite show that we've done so far. We're hitting the 2-hour mark. So I want to thank you personally. Like I said, I reached out to you. It was really, really simple too. I saw you on Telegram in a group. Somebody was messaging you. I said, I'll go back and forth. I hit you up. You responded immediately, about as genuine as you could be. So I really appreciate your time and you coming on. And I know everybody else wanted to wrap up and tell you goodbye as well. And I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, man. I appreciate the invitation. I love doing this stuff. Like this, again, this panel here, like this is so much more engaging than when like I like to put out information and stuff. So like rather than me having to like walk around and hold a rectangle and talk to myself, I ain't no good at that stuff. You guys know I'm not an influencer. It's so much more fun to get here and get, you know, bullied, beat up by good questions, challenge on certain stuff, have good conversations. It's infinitely more fun for myself. So it's my pleasure. I appreciate the invitation.
I appreciate that. I'd like to have you on again too, if you'd be willing. We'll do another show one time.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. Sounds good. Tracker, I'll let you take it away, buddy. We lost him.
No,
No, we
I'm
didn't.
here, man. I'm here. No, I was just saying, I like to have you. I mean, I'd love to talk to you again once Liquid Loans comes back out and we get our feet wet and we can really dive into maybe do some hardcore degen strategies and things like that. If you'd be willing to get into some of that, but like I said, we got to get our feet wet before we get into that.
Yep. Yeah. If we're gonna get real degen, I'll swap from beer to whiskey. We'll have one of those shows. That's a different show altogether, but we can do
There
that.
you go,
for sure.
man. No,
We do
I
a little
like that. I like that
slideshow.
a
We
lot.
do a little slideshow with me, Tracker, and Nate. That's not live, and we just talk about yielding and other fun stuff that we like to discuss. Maybe we'll have an episode of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Non-financial advice, of course.
If you're taking your financial advice from a guy named Walrus on the internet, you're kind of in a bad place, man. Like let's talk about it. Like we need to work out a lot of things.
Well, I would rather trust that person than the government at this point, but that's another discussion.
Jay, sign off, buddy.
Yes, sir. Once again, Walrus, thank you. Like Jeff, we really want to extend our gratitude and appreciation that you took the time out of your busy day, because you are out there building cool stuff, to come spend some time with us here, and we would certainly love to have you back on again. To our audience who joined us tonight, and to those who will be watching us on replay, like always, man, we'd like to thank you guys as well for spending a little bit of your time here with us today. We know that that's your most valuable asset, so we do appreciate that you spend some of that time here with us. Until next time, you can find me on Instagram, agent_J Schroth, and on Twitter at _P90Hex. And I just want to reiterate one time, right? So Liquid Loans as a protocol, they're not out yet, but the testnet is live. If you want to engage with this platform, engage with that community, go out there and learn the ropes using their testnet. Don't be like a bunch of the guys who jump into Pulse Chain but didn't try out the testnet, and so they were lost in day one and didn't know what to do. If you want to get engaged with Liquid Loans, go out and use their testnet, man. That's the best crash course that you're gonna get. And that's it from me. Thank you guys so much again. Thank you, Walrus. Go ahead, Brendan. Tell us where we can find you, buddy.
Will, Nate, you guys sign off, and then I'll take it.
All right, so for those of you aware of my trumpings about the state, I'm currently up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. My next stop, as I had mentioned in the last show, is going to be somewhere over near Burlington, Vermont. So if you're in between those two areas and you want to be on the DGen Roundtable show, I'll stop by and do a live interview with you guys as long as you're not too terribly far out of the way. Message me on Telegram. Make sure you guys join our Telegram, DGen Roundtable, t.me. That's all I got coming up in the pipe. After Burlington, Vermont is St. Louis. So again, if you're in that area, hit me up and we'll do an in-person interview. Mr. Nate, you're up, bud.
Yeah, we're I guess at this point you just call it the insights of Nate, Jeff, and Tracker at this point, because we just keep rolling with more and more things. We got GameFi coming up. We've just closed out DeFi Kingdoms and all of that. It's kind of the transition, as well as DeFi Llama. Quite frankly, though, I'm really in agreement there, Tracker. I think the idea of looking into Liquid Loans and kind of seeing what it is that we can kind of do here, I think that this is a good enough platform where we can really actually do some good stuff in there. So I would love to be able to look into it, like kind of dive deep into it, be able to kind of see what it is that we can start kind of piecing together and just make lots of money, guys. So, and again, you just keep up with our channel. We're just going to keep coming out with more DGen insights. And I'll hand it over to you, Brandon.
Hey, before that, Nate, since you brought it up, it'd be a really cool idea if you, Will, and Tracker actually explored the testnet and explored all of the money printing ideas that you could possibly engage in. That would be, I think, a really good DR insights for our audience. So anybody
that is a great idea. I would absolutely love to do that. Yeah, we got to do that. What do you think about that?
I mean, from my perspective, I've already got it on my to-do list. So.
We're gonna be updating. It'll probably be a week or so. We're gonna get a few things swapped around on Fetch, and then we'll relaunch again. And then again, we'll have that stuff up there. And again, we can do some of that stuff once you guys get through playing with it. We can come out. We'll just do it live. We can just pull up the DAT and just work through everything.
Damn, whiskey in hand and everything. I love it. Let's go.
That's awesome. I think that's a fantastic idea. As everyone just we'll also say, Walrus, really appreciate you coming on. It was really an excellent show. Unbelievable, just advice, knowledge of the crypto space, and Liquid Loans obviously is going to be an incredible platform built on Pulse Chain. For all of those who don't know, most of us here on the panel, we were on Pulse Chain in the seconds of the launch. My first transaction on Pulse Chain was 0.0003 Pulse, not 3,000, 0.0003 Pulse. So, we've been really into that platform from the very beginning. We believe in it. And it takes people that are building on that, like Liquid Loans, to really help that platform grow to what we expect it to be. So Walrus, really, again, appreciate what you're doing. Next week, same time on Wednesday, we have Dollar Cost Crypto, Miguel on the show. So please make sure you tune into that. September 6th, we have Rags to Riches on the show. And so, we're really excited to bring you just some of the big names, the big brains in the industry that are really have, I've learned a lot from just listening to over the years. And we're excited to bring that to you. So again, we're the DGen Roundtable. My name is Brendan of @anonymous_bean on Twitter. And we are here every Sunday and on sometimes special shows on Wednesdays to bring you just current conversation about crypto, the industry, overall economics. And this isn't financial advice, just financial entertainment. So do keep that in mind. Walrus, once this platform launches and once it sort of get rolling, we would really like to talk to you again. Once we sign off here, if you don't mind just sticking around for 1 minute so we can talk to you off stream, we'd really appreciate that. But Nate, Jay, Will, Jeff, people behind the scenes, both Josh and Jen, we couldn't do this without you. So really, everyone watching, thank you again. And we cannot wait to see you on the next episode of the DGen Roundtable. That's all we got. Thank you.
Subscribe, damn it.
Subscribe.